When it was announced in September 2018 that Resident Evil 2, one of the jewels in the crown of Capcom's beloved survival horror giant and my personal favourite video game of all time, was getting a board game adaptation, well, I was tentatively optimistic.
I was basically grinning ear to ear myself.
That's because you're a tabletop gamer by nature, Adam, but for me this would be the game that kicked open the doors to a hobby that I was only just edging towards. But seeing my favourite game so faithfully recreated for the table, well, I remember going from pretty interested to being pretty in love with the project pretty quickly.
Not gonna lie, I did have very much similar feelings as you, Si. I really wanted every crucial element of the video game to be lovingly converted to a new playstyle. Flight-or-flight decisions, the scarcity of the items, the fear that anything could be behind the next door you step through.
Steve is right, which means that the main question here then is, can Steamforged Games do the same thing that they did for Resident Evil 2 for their brand new board game adaptation of Resident Evil 3?
So, starting at the beginning, Steamforged Games were very kind to grant us early access to the digital demo for Resident Evil 3 the board game, which allowed us a look at how the game begins, how it looks, and how it feels to play. From the off, previous players will recognise the vast majority of aspects laid out before them. RE3 uses the same survival horror engine, as it's been dubbed, that the previous iteration did, so experienced players won't have to make much of an adjustment. And importantly, just like the Resident Evil 2 board game, it's very accommodating to new players by not overloading them with information.
This demo will bring players from two different corners of Raccoon City streets together through waves of shambling undead as they try to make good on their escape. It gave us a chance to put the various different characters, all with their own special abilities, into action and get a taste for what they all bring, such as Jill's extra maneuverability or Carlos's great quick reloads. Players can spend more time grabbing items and supplies that may prove useful now or in later scenarios at the cost of taking more turns and drawing more tension deck cards, potentially putting themselves in harm's way.
I think one of the most important things for me is just how the game looks in itself. It's very in line with what we've come to expect from Steamforged, especially in terms of their miniatures. Jill and her temporary UBCS allies look spectacular, and their refreshed character cards, they all have unique artwork, and it's beautiful. And on the subject of artwork, the company have taken efforts to improve in areas that I'd say were a little bit lacking last time, like they've made the streets and the buildings of the Doom City this nice mix of vibrant yet also dark and brooding, while keeping that familiar iconography.
The demo also gave us our first taste of something brand new for Resident Evil 3 the board game, and that was the narrative deck based upon the video game's life selection element. These cards ensure that players will be presented with tough choices to make that could affect their ongoing campaign in many different ways, some good, some bad, some that result in the crushed head of a certain individual and a potential boss fight against everybody's favourite leather-clad daddy of destruction.
Yes, indeed, you couldn't have Resident Evil 3 without Nemesis, and he is lovingly recreated to the same high detail that the Resident Evil 2 miniatures were. We also have a whole range of monsters to contend with, too, naturally, and all of them are recreated beautifully or fittingly horrific depending on your outlook. And whilst we didn't experience them in the demo, we were excited and somewhat terrified to go up against all of them in the full game.
One thing that set the Resident Evil 3 video game apart from its predecessors was its greater emphasis on the feelings of exploration, right? Players finally got the chance to really spend some quality time in the deserted, decaying, undead-filled streets of Raccoon City. And they were tasked with finding supplies and escaping the city's eventual thermonuclear annihilation. This is, of course, a major part of the board game. In fact, it seems to have been the driving force in a lot of what this game brings to the table for the first time.
Keen-eyed superfans of Resident Evil 2 could immediately see that scenarios of the board game faithfully recreated certain areas of the video game in broad, sprawling runs of the Raccoon City Police Department, and Resident Evil 3 the board game is no different in its accuracy. However, this time around, the many scenarios to choose from are smaller and punchier for a few reasons, but the main one being that players will often find themselves backtracking through them in an element very akin to that classic survival horror game.
Thanks to the city dashboard, however, you can be guaranteed that exploration of areas you thought you knew could turn on its head at any moment. Not only do the tension deck and encounter table promise you'll never feel safe, but the more time players spend in the city, the more dire the situation could get. The higher the city danger level rises, the harder it may be for our intrepid survivors to well, survive.
The tension deck also features several tweaks to give it an even higher power over your intestinal fortitude. Effects of these cards can be impacted and exacerbated by how far the city danger level has now risen, and even more strikingly, these cards can also inform how enemies may behave when it's their time to attack. This is to say that all of these elements are designed to instill fear into you, and are now brilliantly woven together. The tension deck is an anchor to the horror.
And this is all just information that we've gathered from playing the demo and reading the regularly scheduled updates from Steamforged. Who knows what lurks out there in the rest of the city in places such as Uptown, Downtown, the Commercial District, the Clock Tower and beyond. Resident Evil 3, the board game, promises to pack in roughly double what the core Resident Evil 2 box did, so it will most certainly hold your attention for countless hours, and that's before taking into account expansions to grow Raccoon City even further.
We started this video by asking if Resident Evil 3, the board game, could successfully convert the video game to tabletop in the same way that Resident Evil 2 did. And well, I think I speak for all of us when I say it completely blows our expectations out of the water.
I absolutely agree. In the same way that Resident Evil 2, the board game, missed absolutely nothing that made the video game great, Steamforged have done it again with Resident Evil 3.
I'm sure that you, like us, are all thrilled to see what else Resident Evil 3, the board game, can offer and deep dive further into the project. And we'll be right there with you, here on our channel and on our Resident Evil board game community on Facebook. This has been Adam,
Steve,
and Sai for First Aid Spray. If you'd like to hear us talk in depth about the Resident Evil board games even more, or Resident Evil in general, have a little explore of our channel and make sure to subscribe. Happy kickstarting, and remember everyone, have a good week.